What's up, YouTube? What's up, YouTube? I just finished editing the main event of Extreme Rules, so you know what that means. It's time for another Behind the Universe episode. This one behind... Well, I mean, it's finished, but, like, I do need to put a couple more finishing touches on it. Like, I haven't done the replays for the main event yet, but... If I do any more editing right now, my brain is just going to explode. So I will touch all this up, add in all the promos and stuff in a bit, because I mean I'll have Extreme Rules done. It goes up Friday. This is Wednesday. I'll have it done. I will have it done. Even the commentary is not even in place right now, just because. I will say that I thought. For a couple of days, sometime like last week, I didn't think that I was going to have this pay-per-view done on time. The minute that I advertised that it was going to be June 23rd in that main event episode I put up on Friday, I hadn't really had much done. I hadn't even recorded all the matches yet, so I was very doubtful that I was going to get this show done on time, but it is done, and I'm just checking my audio. It's done. And, yeah, we didn't miss the deadline. All I have to do is dub the main event and just edit the commentary and put this all into place, which is exactly what I'm going to do tonight. By the looks of it, this is at least a 3-hour show, so fun stuff there. First of all, I do want to apologize for this pay-per-view, because I feel as though, because I was kind of rushing to get it together, I feel as though it wasn't quite as polished as I would have liked it to be. Not to say that I think it was a bad show, but there were certain things I think I could have done better. I guess I don't have anything off the top of my head, but I know like the main event, I think there are some sloppy edits in there. There's just a couple things that could have been... Part of it is also, I think I was in a bit over my depth. Part of that is because I'm coming off of WrestleMania, and I really needed a bit of a break, and I didn't exactly give myself that, because we had the 2 out of 3 falls tag team match, we had the tag team tables match, the Hell in the Cell triple threat, and then the big Fatal 4-Way main event. And that was the 4 of those combined was definitely a tough thing to put together. Right now, you see, this is the Nakamura-John Cena match. Nothing really noteworthy here. But actually, before I forget, there are these little blooper things here. I'm just gonna play these out for you because, you know, I'm gonna end up deleting all this footage not too long from now. So, yeah, just dumb things. I'm gonna have a proper blooper special in the future, but just like these are some of the problems I had to deal with. Just especially this thing that happened once with Titus, once with Darren. Just clothesline and the table breaks, and it was super duper annoying, but hey, we've figured it all out now, and it's all fine and dandy. But this game is, there's just so many things, like, you don't really notice some of the things that are wrong with this game until, like, you know, when you make videos on it, and, you know, you're playing it pretty extensively, it's just some of the things, the things that just dealing with, it makes my brain hurt sometimes. Some of it's not necessarily just flaws with the game, but things with the game that just get in the way. Like, it could be something as simple as, where is the referee standing? And then that will affect my transitions, whether I can just cut to the next shot or whatever. But then there's other things where glitches in the game, man, they are fun. They are fun to try to work around. Nothing too... I mean, most of these matches were just sort of straightforward. One thing I do want to point out here is that I tried to do something a bit different because of how the Extreme Rules transition worked. So as you can see, I have the chroma key effect here because of how it transitions like that. It like blotches out. So I wanted that to fade into the replay graphic. So I used the chroma key tool, and that allows it to just transition through the image. I know I could probably make that look a bit cleaner if I wanted to, like, mask out this image or whatever to make it really fade in all proper like, but I think it looks cool. I mean, I'm not going for the most professional looking thing in the world. I'm obviously just one guy, just a YouTuber. So there's certain or not necessarily limitations, but I don't feel like I have to go the whole 9 yards on every single thing that I make, because if I do that, you guys would never get content. And I do value quality, but I also value consistency along with quality, and I think my work has done well enough in the past and continues to do well. This pay-per-view was all about experimenting with some things. Especially like the main event Fatal 4-Way, I did a couple of things there that were different, but talking about what we're at here, this was the first big hurdle, was the Hell in the Cell for the Intercontinental Championship. So initially, I thought this was all just going to be a triple threat match, but as you can see, the way that the camera tries to include all 3 of these superstars, it really... some of the camera angles could get really bad, because, like, this is pressed up right against, like, the top of the screen. So, like, I can't move up any further, and they're really hugging the top of the screen. I mean, look at this. He's out of the frame. That's just because the game's not giving me a good enough camera angle. So, eventually, I did have to cave in and do some singles matchups. I went a little... The whole beginning part is me kind of trying to make this work, trying to do the whole thing in a triple threat, but it just wasn't happening. And it's nice doing the singles matches, which we get to later on, because you do get the various you get the occasional camera cutaway where it changes angles, and it just looks nice, because like it spices up the visuals a bit, so that way it's more than just me having to crop this all out. Like, I don't really like having them all the way over at the corner of the screen, but there's only so much I can do with the camera shots. Like, I'm all the way up to the side because Rhodes is taking up a good bit of the screen. So it was a bit... The reason why I wanted to do it this way at first was because it's a Hell in the Cell. It's pretty confined. So I thought I could get away with putting it all together this way, unlike in a normal triple threat where superstars roll out of the ring and they're I mean, there's a lot more open space, whereas the Hell in the Cell, everything is kind of trapped. These 3 men are trapped in a smaller space. So I thought it would work, but that really didn't happen. So eventually, you'll see, like, right here is, I think, the first time that I split off into a singles match. Yeah, because this is just between Rhodes and Aries. As always, it's just making sure that if it's a multi-man match, make sure that Jericho's not in the frame, or that he wouldn't be in the frame. But then this goes on for a while. It's just Rhodes versus Aries. Eventually, Jericho's going to get back in here. And of course, it's the usual edits. Just make sure that... I mean, obviously, I had to do some work there. Part of it is, you know, making sure that the camera angle works. There was, I think, a mistake here, because just trying to lift Aries off the mat... Oh, that's not what I wanted to hit. Just trying to pick Aries up off the mat. I hate when you'll try to pick them up and they just stop halfway. Every once in a while that happens. It annoys me because it just makes everything tedious, because I want them to their feet, and it just makes everything slower. So just make a little cheeky edit there. This edit, like I said, there are some sloppy, not necessarily mistakes, because I saw them, I just didn't have the time to correct them. So just some sloppy jumps here. Like, I was trying to get the pin correct, that I would hook Aries' leg in that specific manner, but it just, the game wasn't having it, and I only had so much time to put everything together, because, like I said, I was on a bit of a time crunch, which is why I do apologize that there are some sloppy points in this pay-per-view. I don't think it's my best work, but again, I overscheduled myself a bit with... That's kind of why I am dropping main event. By this point, Mega Main Event probably has aired. I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to be getting this video up. But Mega Main Event, that's going to be the conclusion of main event, just because I feel like I have been... Since coming back from college, part of it is that I've had to... record more of the GM mode, get Pokemon stuff, all the side content, trying to get the backlog for that back up and running, and starting up Universe Mode again was not a hassle, but it was a big investment for me, and that really took a lot of time away from the anime channel. Actually, I have it open in a tab here. Yeah, see, this was the last video I posted while I was at college on this channel. I've only posted four videos in the month or so that I've been back. Two of them aren't even analysis videos. They're just unscripted rambling discussion videos. So I've only made 2 full-blown anime analyses since coming back from college, and that is mostly attributed to working on Universe Mode. Obviously, this channel, there's a lot more going on here in the meantime because of Universe Mode starting back up and just other projects I've been working on. So I really just needed to get over this hurdle, get past Extreme Rules, and I think moving forward, things are going to be a little less draining on me. Like I said, I had fallen way behind on getting this pay-per-view done. So the majority of the last, I think it was about Friday, is when I really started cracking down to get this thing done. And it wasn't because like I was intentionally procrastinating it or anything. I just was struggling to get the regular Universe Mode episodes out on time. So usually I like to have the Universe Mode episodes done like the last week before the pay-per-view. Usually I like to have that done about a week in advance so I can get the pay-per-view, start working on the pay-per-view upwards of 2 weeks in advance, preferably. WrestleMania was a different story. That took like a whole month to put together in its entirety. But as far as just the usual, any other pay-per-view that isn't like a big 4, usually I like to have about a 2-week head start, because then I can get it done pretty comfortably and I don't have to spend an entire week just non-stop editing. But I just didn't have the time since I came back from college in May. It has been a very, very tight schedule between that point and now, with Universe Mode starting back up and just trying to get everything back on track, trying to right the ship again. So now that I've got Extreme Rules out of the way, I think things are going to be, hopefully things will be better off from here. The problem moving forward is that obviously the WWE 2K17, well, the cover star for WWE 2K18 was just revealed, and the release date, there is going to be the digital deluxe edition, or whatever the heck it's called, is you can get it early, which I think the release date for that was, what was it? It was Friday, October, what was the exact date? If I look at it, I'll remember it. It was Friday, October 13th. So the game's going to be coming out the 17th, and I have that last pay-per-view, I was expecting to have it done in about this range. So depending on how the content shapes up, I don't see myself getting early access to the game, just because I'm going to be working down to the wire with that final pay-per-view, just with Universe Mode videos up until then. That was my projected release date for that pay-per-view, is right around, I think, the 14th, maybe the 7th, if I get lucky. But in saying that, my schedule planned out between now and then, it is packed. So I can't really take a week off of Universe Mode again, because I want to get to that certain pay-per-view before the new game comes out. So I'm going to have to jump straight back into making the upcoming Universe Mode episodes, which I haven't started working on them yet, and usually I like to start working on at least getting like Raw and SmackDown recorded, like the matches recorded, before I publish the pay-per-view, but I have not done that yet, and Extreme Rules goes up Friday. Of course, I'm recording this on the 21st, so everything will be back on track by the time we get there then, but just trying to get back ahead of schedule so that I can meet all my deadlines is, I think it's going to be a little less difficult now that I have my backlog good to go. But probably I'd still say July is going to be busy for me yet, just trying to get caught up on everything. Mega Main Event is going to be a pretty big investment as well. So I'm hoping that by the time August rolls around, I'm going to have Universe Mode is going to be all up and running, and I'm not going to be down to the wire again. This past month in Universe Mode, I was down to the wire for the majority of those videos. I think almost every episode of Raw, I only finished working on it maybe like the day of or the day before at most. So hopefully moving forward, that isn't going to be as much of an issue now that I've got Extreme Rules out of the way, and yeah, everything regarding content on this channel is, for the most part, straightened out now. I did try to do a couple of cool, I tried to make a couple, like, slick transitions here. This one isn't perfect, because you see Aries' arm is up in this shot and then down in the next. There are certain things that I can't get the game to work for me. But I thought, like, some of these, trying to like, fuse moves together. So, like, this counter initially was coming out of this, like, Samoan drop position, turns it into a reverse DDT. But I thought, wouldn't it be cool if he hit the crossroads out of here? So that's what we did. I just took this. You see, this is a replay shot. So there was another one right below it, which, I mean, I think looks okay, but that's where the arm, the positioning of the arm is really noticeable. So I decided to push this in there, get it from a completely different angle, and it looks a little less jarring of a transition there. And yeah, at this point, Jericho's already been knocked out of the match, so these two go on. And yeah, this one I thought was kind of interesting, how he went for this elbow drop, and I needed Rhodes to gain back the momentum at some point, but the AI just happened to, I mean, like, Rhodes just happened to recover in time to get out of the way. It wasn't like a planned spot or anything, it just was like an in-the-moment thing, which I thought was really cool. And I just ran with it because I needed to switch the momentum back anyway, and that ended up just leading to the finish here. This wasn't the best camera angle, I admit, with the Hell in the Cell being there. The chain link just kind of gets in the way. But the original shot wasn't that great either, because it's a shot from behind, so when he taps out, you don't really see it. So I figured I'll go with it from this angle. You can at least see him tapping out, even if the cell kind of, it was just bad positioning where this big metal bar was, because if that wasn't there, it would have looked fine through the chain link, but that is just really in the way. But I work with what I have, and yeah, that was the Hell in the Cell match. The next match, the Open Invitational, nothing really noteworthy here. It's just a singles match, just making sure everything matches up properly. That wasn't one of the big topics of discussion I wanted to touch on here. Although I'm sure Tommaso Ciampa, I'm sure his debut, I'm hoping that went over well. I know TJ Perkins was a pretty cool guy to bring into the series. Tommaso Ciampa, I think, was something different. Like, I could have gone with like a Ty Dillinger, or maybe some other guy from the Cruiserweight division. I could have done like a Kota Ibushi or something. But I thought, well, let's do Tommaso Ciampa. Let's pick a guy from a tag team. I had debated making it Johnny Gargano, but in the end, I went with Ciampa instead. Then you have this 2 out of 3 Falls tag team matchup, which, again, I think could have been better. This one was going to be more simple just because it's a 2 out of 3 Falls match, so there's not a whole lot you need to do there. One big issue that I didn't realize until I had edited, like I was in the process of editing the footage, and because I was short on time, I didn't really have time to go back. Well, it's not even that I didn't have time to go back and record it all. It's just that everything beyond this point was going to be wrecked because I screwed one thing up here. There you see, Buddy Murphy's the legal man, and when we come back from the replays, Buddy Murphy is not the legal man. What happened there? It just slipped my mind. For some reason, I thought that Wesley Blake was the legal man when he wasn't. So I had to just kind of, I had to fix it on commentary by saying, oh, there was a tag. There was a tag made during, like, the crowd cutaway or the replays or something, whatever I said. So yeah, minor botch there on my part. Another one of my sort of sloppy mistakes. This went on for a little bit. I thought that this 2 out of 3 falls tag team matchup could have been... I thought I could have dragged it out a bit more to bring out the tension. I thought it was kind of short for what it was, because I think it was maybe like 20 minutes total from bell to bell. Yeah, this was about 1:16 that it started, and it was over. The replays were done, the final replays were done 16 minutes later. So it was a really quick 2 out of 3, it was really quick for a 2 out of 3 falls match. But because it's a tag team match, it's so much more difficult to work with. I knew, like, the moment I made this matchup that I was probably going to regret making it, because I've done so much with tag team matchups lately. We had, back at Fastlane, we had the tag team gauntlet. Then at WrestleMania, we had the Fatal 4-Way tag team match. And in this pay-per-view alone, I had two tag team matchups. The other one being the Tornado Tables match for the tag titles. And I'm really sick of tag team matches. I don't think I'm going to do another stipulation match like this for some time, because tag team mechanics, they just suck. They always have. I can't think of a game that had good tag team wrestling mechanics from THQ, from 2K, whatever the case. I think the last time they even, like, revamped the tag team mechanics was back in SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, and even then, the AI was just garbage. So, working with tag team matchups, it's just annoying. So, I kind of cut my losses here with this 2 out of 3 falls match. I thought it could have been perhaps a bit more polished, but I had to get the rest of the show done, and I couldn't afford to really miss this deadline, because if I miss this one, then everything else beyond this point is just gonna continue to fall apart. So I'm really gonna be down to the wire for the rest of this game cycle, getting these shows out on time with my current schedule. So I could not afford to miss this one. So this pay-per-view, I just had to get done what I could. This, again, like, this is something that I can't really fix, because it was the final fall. If I had a different camera angle to work with, it would have been nice, but the AI just sucks. Like, Dash Wilder coming in to break it up. Like, this is stupid. How you just go for a shoulder block, but because he's entering the ring, you can't hit him, so you just whiff. And they're mugging the camera. Not too happy with it, but it got the job done, and that was the 2 out of 3 falls match. This US title match, again, fairly simple stuff, nothing complex to speak of there. You have the match that goes on for a while. The Outcasts come down to the ring. One thing I did have to do here, obviously you have their theme in the background. Just getting the bell to ring, making sure that's all there, just fairly simple stuff. And cutting everything together so that nothing, like, overlaps. So you've got, you know, action in one part of the arena. You've got Axel over there at the ringside area, and then you've got Swagger in the ring, dealing the damage, holding up the title. It just looks cool. Then there is Brock Lesnar versus Rusev, which, for how simple this matchup was, I think I'm pretty proud with it. I'm proud of it, rather. There weren't really many complex edits in this one. Like, I didn't really have to cut away a lot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Which is unusual, because typically I'll have a couple of mistakes, a couple of botches. Like, there was one, but I was able to just zoom in closer and get them back in the same positioning. A lot of it's just make sure that the pinfall gauge gets cropped out. There was a bit of a mistake there, so that just a close-up fixing that. But this whole match was one take. I didn't have any botched kickouts with it or anything, which was really nice. I just thought that the way that this matchup flowed, the physicality of it, the way that they were, I don't know, just the progression of the match I thought was really solid. There wasn't anything, I wasn't going for any super complex spots with it. So that's why I say it was fairly simplistic. It was just kind of two guys fighting and then just throw in a couple weapons. But I think it worked out really well for what it was meant to be. So no real issues with this matchup. I guess if I had messed up somewhere, I would have had to re-break the announce table, which is always tricky because you have to deal enough damage to build up a finisher, and then breaking the table, and then, you know, any future pinfall attempts, just, it gets really tricky trying to kick out, so that's always an issue. So I'm glad that worked all in one take. Then you have the tag team tables match, which, again, I think was more simple than perhaps it could have been. There weren't really many tag team wrestling moments in this matchup, which I think is interesting in its own right. It's, for a tag team match, there's only so many different ways you can approach it, so the fact that this was going to be a tables match, I think making it more of the two, you know, the divide and conquer strategy is how I called attention to it on commentary. Was this was really the ultimate strategy for the primetime players, was to really break it off into two separate singles matches. I suppose I could have tried, like, I guess if I had a little more time, or if I wasn't so burnt out with tag team matches, I probably could have mixed up the confrontations here. Like, I could have had Bubba and Darren face off, or Devon and Titus, or have like a 2-on-1 situation in certain places, but again, just being short on time, it just, doing the two singles matchups like this, it was just easier for me. So it was basically just cut back and forth between each, because they were in two separate areas, so it worked out really nicely, just transitioning back and forth. It was really weird recording it, though, because I did Darren versus Devon first, and after that match was done, I did Titus versus Bubba Ray, and because after I did the Devon Darren, I just decided I'm going to do two singles matches and just work with it that way. So that's what I did, and I think everything went together pretty well. There were a couple of transitions that didn't quite work because I had more footage between Darren and Devon than I did with Bubba and Titus, so I did have to use one crowd cutaway there to break up the action a bit. And this ending, maybe a bit too choreographed. The fact that both go through the tables at the same time. And a split screen, I tried to experiment with some split screen in this pay-per-view. Perhaps it's something I could use in the future, because I think the idea of, especially in the multi-man matchups, where you're cutting back and forth, you can only show one thing on screen at once, so putting in all of the action can make matches drag on longer than perhaps they need to, especially when it's supposed to create the illusion that you're having two different fights at the same time at once, and it might feel like one fight isn't progressing while the other one, like, one is on screen and the other one is just the two guys just standing around, because it doesn't feel like much progress is being made. So this one, the split screen, was only so much as getting the having both go through the tables at the same time, because the fact that it wasn't an elimination tables match, I figured it'd be really cool to put them through the tables at the same time. I wanted them to both be in the ring at first, but it just didn't end up working out that way. I still kind of struggle with figuring out how the heck these tables mechanics work, like how to use the apron moves to put them through a table. I have not figured that out yet. But yeah, look at this. Table no break. And there it goes. Good work, 2K. Yeah, just clip through the table. That's how everybody loves their tables matches to end. Just like that. And just the table just crushing both men. Wonderful. I didn't end up using replays for this matchup just because with the nature of it being a tables match, there weren't really any false finishes I could go back to, or any moments where it looked like a guy could go through the table, but like there's only, with the way the table mechanics work, you can't really fake, there aren't many real fake outs you can do with putting someone through a table. You could have last second reversals beforehand, but it doesn't look that convincing that they're going to go through the table. And I didn't really have any instances like that in the match, so I figured just skip the replays for that one, because there wouldn't have been many, or they wouldn't have been very, very high profile, very dramatic. Continuing on with the theme of things that could have been better, the club came down to the ring and beat up the Dudley Boys. I don't think there's anything wrong, like, with booking storyline-wise in this pay-per-view. When I say that things could have been better, it's mainly just production-wise. The fact that I just ended up splitting it off into two singles matches. Luke Gallows taking out Devon, Carl Anderson taking out Bubba Ray. I don't think it was necessarily the best. I thought there could have been more instances of tag team domination. But, again, everything I've been doing with the tag team scene as of late, with all the different match types I've been implementing, just kind of getting a bit burnt out. And after going through everything with the Primetime Players match, I actually forgot that I wanted to tack this part on. So I kind of came back to this last minute, and I had recorded this bit. I think I did this right before, which one was it? I thought maybe I could find it in here, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It was probably this one with the Hell in the Cell, because I needed to put the finishing touches on that match as well. And I just kind of wanted to get it done, to have it up there. That really was just a consistent thing with this pay-per-view, was making sure that I got it done on time, because the last thing I wanted to do was advertise a date and then miss that date, because as I've said, the rest of the schedule would fall apart. And before, I used to not advertise dates for pay-per-views. I would just upload them when they were finished. But then I feel like this is better, because people know when it's coming and they know when to be ready for it. And it also gives me extra motivation to get the thing done, which the deadline was a huge motivator for this one, because as I've said, last Friday I didn't think that I was going to have it done in time, because I had barely started it just because I didn't have the time. This matchup, singles match, there wasn't really anything too noteworthy. This was just an interesting mistake, going for the running hip attack and just completely overshooting it. So I decided just to roll with it, because there are certain botches I'll work with, because it looks like a mistake on the part of the superstar rather than a mistake on the part of the game. So that one I'll let go, because I think it gave Emma an opening, and I think it worked into the narrative of the match. So this goes on for a bit longer. I don't think there was really anything else that happened in this matchup, just cropping out the submission bar, cropping out the pinfall attempts, and yeah, all that stuff. So this was an interesting last-minute addition to the show. This wasn't originally planned that I would have a backstage brawl between two superstars, but I figured, you know what, let's do it. It's a good transition in between matches, and I didn't have anything with Jericho and Cena coming off of their losses. I thought it would help. It would be a good new feud to create. Have two guys who are down on their luck just get into a fight backstage, because I don't really have too many rivalries that start off like that. Like, just kind of, they seem to just happen by circumstance. Like, the beginning of this really just kind of seems like an accident, because they bump into each other backstage, and then, well, the tensions boil over, and then the fight breaks out, and that kickstarts their rivalry. So now I can move forward with John Cena versus Chris Jericho. So I thought that was an interesting last-minute adjustment. Just another way to add some breathing room between matchups. We go from the women's title match to the WWE title match, Daniel Bryan versus Kevin Owens. And again, nothing really complex with editing this one. No real story to tell with any production mishaps or anything. This one was fairly straightforward. Just the usual edits that I've gone into more depth with in previous Behind the Universe pay-per-view breakdown. So if this is the first one you're seeing and it feels like I'm kind of breezing through things, then I highly encourage that you check out either the Royal Rumble one or the WrestleMania one. I think they both, Royal Rumble specifically, went into more detail on how I make the stuff. So that has more of the more basic components of my editing, if I can even words. It's been a long day. I did most of the commentary today, so my throat kind of hurts a bit, but I didn't want to throw out my voice for the main event commentary, so I'll save that for tomorrow. But I also wanted to make videos besides editing, because my brain is numb to editing at this point. So I wanted to make this because I knew I'd have to release this at some point. And I figured making it straight after I finished editing I thought would be a good idea, because then you could just get my raw thoughts immediately after finishing the show. And plus it'd be fresh in my mind. So again, a lot of the, like, this warm-up stuff, I didn't plan that out at first. That was a last-minute addition. The same with the one with Cesaro earlier. I only had a couple of transitions planned for this show, so I threw in a couple more near the end of production. One thing I was pretty happy with were the attires, more specifically the attires for this matchup. I think sometimes I tend to accidentally give superstars like similar or the same colored attires, and it doesn't quite make sense that they would kind of be dressing the same. But I think the mix of colors in this one, I thought I did a good job with. It's really just changing up the trunks and the ring gear. I didn't really add any logos in it because I'm not very good at that. I just kind of use the in-game logos and then just change up the colors, and that's mainly what I do. Maybe I'll add in an extra piece of clothing here or there, but I'm not the most creative person in that regard, and I don't claim to be, I don't try to be. I'm more invested in making sure that the matches are technically sound, that they can craft a good narrative, and then that the storylines aren't full of plot holes and everything, you know, that crafts a compelling narrative as well. This Fatal 4-Way matchup, this was the one that I just finished, and I thought it was interesting. Doing the Fatal 4-Way tag team matchup kind of gave me some good prep work for this, in that I was cutting between a lot of different matches. I don't know exactly how many were in this one, but you've obviously got the initial Fatal 4-Way, and immediately with multi-man matchups like this, I just try to spread the competitors out as soon as possible, because it's a lot easier to keep track of things that way, and there is less room for errors when there's only two superstars on the screen that I'm controlling both superstars, that there's no AI people to contend with. This was the part when I really wasn't sure with how to construct this matchup, because I had done matches like this in the past where I cut back and forth between two separate confrontations, like I did earlier with the tables match. With this one, I felt as though the action was too drawn out if I just had the singles matches, because as you can see, the way it is now, it's about a 20-minute match, which I think is a good enough length. But if I didn't do the split screen stuff, it probably could have been 25. Yeah, maybe adding like an extra 5 minutes to the matchup, because I cut some stuff out in the early stages because I felt as though it went on a little too long, and I didn't think that... I felt as though it was a really slow start to the matchup if I just focused on these guys for a bit, then went back to the other guys, then back to these guys, back to the other guys, and then to the points where they merged together. So I figured, why not? We will mix it up. We'll do some split screen for a change. And you might be wondering, well, how did I do this? How did I add in the split screen effect? Well, first of all, this little doohickey here, I took a screenshot of, this is from the game. This is the the little sliver of a split screen that 2K17 uses. I took a shot at one point, I don't remember when it was. I think that I did this way back for the Royal Rumble, where I just used the cookie cutter tool to crop out both sides, and then I have a transparent split screen divider thing. As for the footage itself, the top clip, I just need to use the cookie cutter to make sure that it, like, again, I made up these templates. I have one for the left side, one for the right side, although usually I only need one for whatever's on top. I made these templates back for the Royal Rumble, was really when I first used this, but I hadn't used the split screen in a match in this way. So I don't typically use the split screen because both sides of the footage will then start lagging. There's like a drop in the frame rate. So doing it this way myself, with having two regular matches, I thought it worked really well. It's better to not slow down the footage, like not mess up the frame rate. As for the other side, the bottom one, I just have to move it over a bit to make sure that everything looks good, everything looks fine and dandy, so that, because if I didn't do that, if I just had it centered, then you wouldn't be seeing these two guys fighting. You'd see, it'd be cut off, it'd be cut in half. So I did that, just to, it's gonna make the match a bit more difficult for me to add commentary to, I say because I haven't done it yet, but there's a bit more to look at. Maybe it's a bit more visually interesting. It's possible that it's a bit distracting that I set it up this way, but it was an experiment. It was to test something new, try something different. Some things work, some things don't, so I guess I'll see. I'll find out for myself when I do the commentary how I think it worked out. Because editing things in the video editor, things look fine to me because I'm seeing everything on like a frame-by-frame basis. When I actually watch it back is when I'll figure out whether or not I think it worked out well. But hopefully you guys were cool with it. There were a couple instances where, just because there were botches in each of the two matches I had, there were some mistakes. So I just would cut out of the split screen and focus on one side of the action to give the other a bit more breathing room. And otherwise, like, I would have it split in half, and then you'd have half of a crowd cutaway, and it would just look really dumb. So it was kind of tricky to put this all together because I didn't know how I wanted it to look. But for what the end result came out to be, I'm pretty happy with it. So that was the first stage of this Fatal 4-Way match, where no one's even really in the ring. But then we kick things back into the ring. The problem with doing it this way is that I couldn't crop out the pin bar, because as things are here, everything is pretty vertically, no, everything is, was this vertically cramped or horizontally? Like, this is vertical, but like the side, so I guess it's horizontally cramped. So if I tried to zoom in on it any further, I meant to regular click, not right click. If I try to zoom in on this any further, just to crop that out, then Cesaro and Rollins aren't really in the shot. Then they start to, they're not in the frame. So to crop this out would be to then cut them off, and I didn't want that. So that was there. Again, if I had a little more time, maybe I could have tried to figure out a different way to make that work, but it was just experimenting with something different, so not everything's gonna be perfect, and I'm willing to accept that. And from this point on, you got no more split screen. There was just touching up the Rollins-Cesaro matchup. I think I've done a pretty good job at avoiding crowd cutaways for the most part. Some of the matches earlier, obviously when I'm cutting between two different things, I don't have to cut to the crowd. But when I need to go from a shot like this immediately to Randy Orton being on the apron and Cesaro being on his feet and Rollins having him, it just couldn't do it, so I had to do the crowd cutaway to give a bit more breathing room. This goes into a triple threat for a little bit. And this just, I had to zoom in because the toss back didn't really work so well. into this sling blade because the game did this stupid thing where, like, I forget what happened the first time. Was it the first time that it screwed up? Yeah, so he, like, missed him. Hang on, let me elevate this so I can not have it auto-snap. But yeah, he, like, ducks behind him somehow, like he missed, so it just looked really awkward and dumb and stupid. So I had to redo it, and then I needed it so that Cesaro would roll out of the ring afterwards, so that these two could go after each other. This time I was smart, and I made sure that I gave myself a move to transition through. The only problem is the stupid referee was constantly screwing up my shot, so he's a little out of position here because I did this like 5 or 6 times and I just couldn't get it back because the ref didn't want to be in the correct spot. He would always be moving over here or moving down here, so I just went with what I had. And I think for just the hard cut like that, it's not as noticeable, but it's a tad annoying when the referee doesn't want to do what I want. That's not really a problem with the game, it's only a problem that I would encounter because I'm editing the footage in a certain way. But it's one of the things that gets on my nerves the most is this damn referee. He's constantly screwing up my shots. But I guess that wouldn't happen if I didn't make mistakes. But I wouldn't make mistakes if the game didn't force me to make mistakes, because there are certain things, just glitches and whatnot, that the game is just dumb. It is broken. So this one here, we go from the Rollins-Orton singles match to, I had to get to Styles, so I just did a close-up on him over on the apron, because this transition wasn't gonna work, just going from Orton being in the ring to Orton not being there, and I could have cropped it a certain way probably and had a really, really close shot on these guys, but this is already a pretty close shot, so it would have been cutting out more than I would have liked, so I just let it go that way. Just give a bit more breathing room by focusing on Styles getting to the position. Because I could just cut straight to it, but I don't think it looks as nice because it's even more of a jump cut because Orton suddenly just isn't there. There is another instance of that later on in this matchup, but these two go at it for a while. Just more pinfall stuff, more submission stuff. There was no real pretty way to make this next transition work. We have Rollins kicking out of whatever Styles had just done. I needed... Cesaro was out of action for a little while, so I wanted to just kind of show that, hey, he's still here, he's still in the match. Because sometimes it gets a little too unbelievable if somebody's outside of the ring for too long without getting involved in the match, unless you basically kill them with, like, a super ultra finisher or something. So I just did that to show that Cesaro was still there, still alive, and it also provided an opening for Rollins to take out a distracted Styles, but again, that transition wasn't going to work because Styles isn't even facing this direction, so I just had to do another crowd thingamawhatsit. I screwed up the frog splash the first time. I didn't kick out, so I had to do another doobly-doo there. This... Again, the referee. You want to talk about the ref messing up my shots? This would have been fine. This would have been okay if it wasn't for the referee. But there wasn't really anything I could do in this situation. That one I just let slide. The ref just teleports. I don't like doing that. But if I throw in a crowd cutaway here, it cuts away from the action and it drags everything out and there isn't as much breathing room. Because if I gave it... Like, if I threw the crowd cutaway in there, I would trim a little off of this, and a little off of the other one. But then, it would look... Too much would be happening, because you'd cut from him being, like, here, to him being, like, here, and then Orton just shows up. It doesn't look as nice when you're cutting back and forth between a bunch of different things. So, I decided to just bite the bullet, let the referee do his teleportation, no jutsu, and then have Orton pop up and dump him out because it just flows nicer. Like I'm just gonna play that back for you. The referee does teleport, but I think it just looks nicer to not cut away from the action in that instance than it would be to cut away from it. This one, I admit, was a bit forced. The next transition, I think this matchup had a lot more in terms of action, like action beats per minute. I think this matchup had the most out of any other multi-man match I've done before, with having multiple people on screen, just trying to make more natural transitions. Because like I said, I'm trying to avoid the crowd cutaways whenever I can. So, obviously, I just kept Orton hidden in this shot until the last possible second. And obviously, of course, this was in the singles match between Styles and Rollins. Then we cut to a triple threat where I just kept Orton out of the shot until the last second, and then just had him launch Rollins over the top. Initially, this was going to be where Orton and Styles battled it out, but he turned around and Styles hung him up, so I decided, okay, I'll just roll with it. Orton's on the outside, so I'll have him go up against Rollins. And then, with Styles not facing the proper direction, I just had to do a close-up on Cesaro, and it makes everything feel fast. It really does feel like the pace is quickening, because you have Orton pop up out of nowhere to send Rollins to the outside, and it almost feels like all four superstars are almost like they're all on screen or in the same field at the same time. Whereas when you're cutting back and forth between multiple singles matches, it almost feels like they're disconnected, like there is a bit of a, like they're not in the same realm, like they're, like, I don't really know how else to describe it other than there is a bit of a disconnect in the timing, the pacing. There's just something off. But when I jump from Styles hanging out Orton, having his back turned, to Cesaro just running up behind him and then just launching himself, I think it's one of the moments I would say I'm the most proud of through this experiment, by trying to frame these matches in this different way. And just like that, we've got a new arc in the match. You've got Styles and Cesaro having a singles confrontation. Some of these I just had to make sure to not show too much of ringside, because that's where Rollins and Orton were supposed to be. And then just a lot of back and forth between these two guys. I had much more of an interaction between Orton and Rollins. They ended up actually spilling into the crowd. But the way that everything flowed together, because I ended up taking him all the way around the ring, and there just wasn't enough breathing room, like not enough was happening in the ring to give me enough time to space that out. Also, another thing that really irritates me is these two announce tables, because some of this was recorded in Exhibition, some of it was recorded in Universe Mode. And what really irks me is that in Exhibition Mode, you have two announce tables. In Universe Mode, you have one. So, if in some of my older matches that I recorded in Universe Mode, there is one announce table. In, like this one I think has a good, no, maybe that one was Exhibition as well. I think it was. That was Exhibition. But, like, you go from having two announce tables to one, and it's inconsistent, and I don't like it, but it's just the game. There's only so much I can do there. Like, unless there's a way to get rid of it, I guess I could I have, like, created a custom arena to work around that? Like, do a custom arena and only have it have one announce table? Is that a thing you can do? But then, with loading times, it was just something I didn't have time to fix. And really don't have the interest to fix something like that, quite honestly. That's just... I should try to fix something like that. I really should if I want things to look as professional as possible, but at the end of the day, this is just a series I'm making for fun, so if something like this, something that I can't really control, is out of place, then certain things like that I'll just let slide. It all depends on how much time I have and how much time I'm willing to invest. Now that I've got a second channel going, I'm a little less interested in making everything picture perfect. Not like I was trying to make everything picture perfect before. There was a limit to how far I was willing to go, because, like I said, I do value some semblance of consistency, And the fact that I advertised dates for things like this one, I had a date, I needed to make that date, that deadline, and that's what I did. So then Cesaro dumped to the outside. I just zoomed in on him to make the transition back to Styles Orton a bit more natural. RKO countered, they go back and forth for a bit. And this is where another one of the big spots came up. Actually, before I even got there, this was on the fly. This was not even intentional. So that looks like a pretty cool transition there, right? You think maybe, if you watch that back, if you didn't know any better, you'd think maybe that was just one solid motion. But that wasn't initially a DDT. It was a hip toss. This just kind of happened. He went for the exploder, it got blocked, so I thought, okay, he did the hip toss, but I was like, no, wait, Styles has a move that has a very similar position to that. He's got a DDT. So I just transitioned to the DDT. It might not have been the cleanest transition in the world. The camera angles are very, very similar. So I would have preferred a more pulled back shot if I was going to make that transition. But I didn't have that to work with, so I just went with that. And I think it works. I think it was a nice little impromptu edit there. Most of this stuff was impromptu, but unlike in most other matches I've done, I had a very clear finish planned for this matchup, and it all started right here. Right here with this RKO from the attempted phenomenal forearm. This is my official pay-per-view document that has all the matches in it. And I already opened this once, but I forgot that there's spoilers underneath here for the next pay-per-view Payback, so had to make a nice cheeky edit there. But as you can see right here, I have a few notes, a few production notes for how I wanted this match to go. Fun fact, Seth Rollins was not originally going to be in this matchup. The original finish I had for this matchup was the phenomenal forearm countered into the RKO. Then there was the... Like, this was all planned out before I even started the pay-per-view. This was planned out even once I added Seth Rollins in the match. This finish was planned out from several weeks ago. I think it might have even been upwards of a month ago that I had this finish planned out in my mind, which usually doesn't happen. Usually I just go on the fly and everything that happens just happens. This time, though, I had a scripted finish, something I wanted to go for, which was, of course, the RKO counter from the forearm. You had the punt kick into the pop-up Styles Clash, and then, yeah, everything that happened in the match. From this point on, not everything was scripted, because I did make a couple of small mistakes, but the really big spots were planned out. So the phenomenal forearm into the RKO, that was fully planned out in advance, because it was a nice callback to their match at Roadblock. This could have been smoother, I will admit. I thought that the punt kick into the pop-up Styles Clash would have looked nicer, but just because of where Styles is positioned, if he was over a bit more, this might have worked. I might have been able to make a smoother transition, but if I had tried to zoom in to take Styles out of the shot, then it would have looked just really... Hang on, that's because I'm way back here. It would have just looked really dumb. It wouldn't have flowed well. Like, nothing's in the shot here. So if I want to take Styles out of the shot, I have to take Orton out of the shot, or at least mostly. So that wasn't going to work. I could have done a crowd cutaway in between, but I can't. I can't do that here, because it's supposed to be an immediate catch you off guard with this move. So if I did the crowd cutaway, there would have been just a sudden stop in the action because we're cutting away, and it would have taken away from the surprise. So again, I had to bite the bullet and just let the jarring transition happen. He's on his knees one moment, popped up to his feet the next. There wasn't really any other way I could have made that look smoother. If I had a different camera angle, maybe, but the highlight reel sucks. This was just the best I could have come up with. This is probably my least favorite moment in the show, because that's the problem with trying to plan out spots in a match like this, is that it doesn't always work. This one in particular, I thought would have worked out really nicely, because Orton's got the running start, and then that's how the pop-up Styles Clash works, is from a running position. So in my head, planning this out several months ago, I thought, well, okay, this is going to work. He goes for the punt kick, but Styles just catches him with that pop-up Styles Clash. It's going to be beautiful. And then something like that happens, and it doesn't work at all. So that's part of the reason why I don't typically plan out spots in advance. Some of them work really nice because the moves go straight into each other. Like, for example, on that one episode of Raw, when I did the Cesaro and Ziggler were in that tag team matchup, and Cesaro went for the springboard European uppercut, and it turned into a super kick. That went together pretty nicely, just because the moves just flow. But that one, not so much, because Styles on his knees just didn't get there. So then we made the transition to Cesaro entering the ring. This wasn't exactly how I had planned it, but it just worked. Having Cesaro clear house, take out Orton and Styles, rather. And then launch himself over the top, which originally it wasn't going to be Orton who took this spot from Rollins. I think it might actually still be in my notes. It was, yeah, because it was supposed to come down to Orton gets knocked out of the ring by Cesaro. Well, no, he gets knocked out after the Styles Clash, just kind of rolls out of the ring. That didn't end up working out with the footage I had. But then it was going to go down to Styles and Cesaro before Rollins pulled the ropes like Orton did and took Styles out of the ring. But then I ended up doing that with Orton earlier on in the match to get rid of Rollins. So with the way that whole last bit of footage played out, I decided not to repeat that again. So instead I went with I had Orton take the spot that was supposed to go for Cesaro, which for the longest time I didn't even know that this was a counter, that you could counter the attempted spear into this Inzaguri. I think it's called a Gamengiri. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, but it's, using the ropes for an Inzaguri. Before, it used to be like you would duck out of the way and then I think hit him with a big boot or something from the apron, or like a knee. But I don't know if this is a new thing that they added for high flyers, how long this has been in the game. But I had seen it, I had seen this used several times. The AI would actually use it. In the tag team match earlier with the Revival, there was a mistake in there where I tried to knock Dash Wilder off the apron, and he blocked it with this kick. And so then I thought, oh, that animation's in the game. Well, then I think I'm going to use this in this main event. So Rollins hits that springboard knee. I figured, why not? We'll get a false finish out of it. Then clear Orton out of the ring. And because Styles had just gotten taken out, it worked nicely. It got me right back to where I wanted to be for the ultimate finish, which was between Rollins and Cesaro. The transition, again, not so clean there, so I just close up on Cesaro. Then you get the fake-out sunset flip, which wasn't initially planned, but it worked, and it transitioned perfectly into the move that I needed. Well, almost perfectly. I had to do a little, because, like, he just walks up to him, and I was trying to do the finisher, and it just, like, didn't register. So there was a bit of a awkward pause there, so I just cut it out. And then go for the curb stomp, catapults into the air, and into the Swiss Death, the European uppercut. Was that transition 100% perfect? I guess not, but I think that's about as close as I'm going to be able to get it. This was a similar thing to Cesaro, his springboard uppercut getting reversed. And again, this is a lot easier to notice when I break it down frame by frame. When you just watch it play out, it doesn't look like, unless you are specifically looking at it for, like, now that I've shown you the frame by frame, it might be a bit easier to notice. But just watching it play out, it looks, for the most part, looks pretty natural. The only real issue is Seth's legs. In here, they just kind of, they get repositioned, which isn't ideal, but the way that the animation works, that's just something I can't exactly work around. So that was the last big edit. Then we go for the neutralizer, and that concludes the match. I still have to put together the replays, and then I just decided, because I had forgotten to make this a world title match, so Cesaro had his celebration, so I decided, okay, we'll just cut it with a different championship celebration. And yeah, that's the show. So thank you for watching me for another Behind the Universe. This one was perhaps a bit more rambly than it needed to be, because I'm still kind of, my mind is still numb from editing. But I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Thank you, as always, for watching. And until next time, keep on YouTubing.